as you probably guessed, I've been playing Marvel's Spider-Man recently. Specifically, I was 100%ing the whole game, the main story and all 3 DLCs. Now, it's been a long time since I've played either of them, but especially the DLCs, as I did try to replay Spider-Man Remastered once about when it came out when the PS5 launched. However, for the DLC, The City That Never Sleeps, I had not played that since it was initially released in the 2018 to 2019 span. I don't exactly remember when the last one came out. But in playing these DLCs, I have really encountered some fundamental issues that actually, upon revision, seem to actually point to the similar flaws that both Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 have when compared to the main campaign of the first game. So, first off, let's start with some DLC-specific stuff. First off, all 3 episodes of The City That Never Sleeps feels like completely separate. And I think in one aspect that could work to the DLC's strength, right? You have the heist, which focuses significantly on Black Cat. The Maggia is kind of a background force. You don't get to see Hammerhead until the very end. You don't get to really interact with any of the Maggia guys except for, the grunts that you're fighting. And most of it really focuses on characterizing Black Cat and, Walter Hardy for the one side mission he's in, and also Screwball. Screwball's there, as will become a constant in the DLC. But when you get to the second one, then, okay, it's entirely focused on the Maggia, and then Hammerhead, but Hammerhead is still being built up as kind of this background threat up until the very end. And the entire DLC that time actually focuses around Yuri Watanabe and her being affected by Hammerhead's ruthless war against the police, which is cool. That sounds nice. The heist could have been a one-off, it ended with Black Cat, quote-unquote, dying in an explosion. Obviously, she didn't, but, the second one feels like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Hammerhead's in the picture, the police are involved, you're getting a much more a deep look into how this works. But then, in the third one, the focus shifts again almost entirely to Silver Sable and the Symkarian Civil War, and how Hammerhead stealing Sable tech is blowing over into that. A consequence of this is not just, the story feeling disjointed and very episodic, but Hammerhead is completely wasted as a villain. Seriously wasted. In this game, he feels like just a discount kingpin, I would have wished, rather, that Wilson Fisk just got out of jail and Spider-Man was fighting him for the DLC, because at least then, oh, it's Kingpin, he's awesome, but Hammerhead, really, he's just not as big, he's not as iconic, and this DLC doesn't do anything to make him feel that way, because I swear most of the characterization he goes through is done through J. Jonah Jameson's podcast and not actual interactions with the man himself. It's very weird, and this is not how I would have told a story, especially with a villain that, of course, has not been previously, introduced or established whatsoever. Hammerhead feels like a complete non-entity in his own story where he's the main villain. His grunts just feel like guys without a leader, without a purpose, and in fact, that is another thing. Aside from a generic control the city mantra that, Kingpin or even Norman Osborn in the first game a little bit had, or Silver Sable in the main campaign had, Hammerhead is just kind of his own, just little generic mob guy. It's very frustrating. But of course, Hammerhead, I could excuse, bad villain, whatever, it's DLC, but Yuri Watanabe's story is actually butchered almost to a worse extent, actually definitely to a worse extent, right? She is built up in the second DLC as a big part of the focus, right? In the first DLC, she's literally not there. In the second one, she is like a main character, basically second to Spider-Man himself. That is a big deal, that she is kind of at the forefront of everything Hammerhead is doing there. And, at the end of the DLC, she gets her big moment. She, shoots Hammerhead point blank, and, obviously doesn't kill him, but, it seemed like the midpoint of her arc. Can you guess what happens in the third one? yeah, she doesn't appear, like, at all. And again, this is the problem, right? Episodic. For some reason, they decided in this continuing storyline that they wanted to tell, they couldn't continue the storyline. So Yuri's conclusion, at least to this beginning of her vigilante arc, is relegated to a side quest unlocked near the end of the DLC that's basically a complete afterthought that you do right before the final boss. And oh, let me talk about that final boss. It's not good, and the conclusion after it is basically non-existent. I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why it just ended so quickly. Like, nothing was truly resolved. If you didn't do one of the other side quests relating to the Hammerhead strongholds, you wouldn't have even, like, recovered the, like, Simkarian aid that Silver Sable was there to recollect. It was... I don't know, it's such a just boring story as well. A disjointed, boring story with a villain who's underwhelming, whose final design is absolutely atrocious and laughable. I mean, like, he looked pretty fine without the mech suit. Then he, it's like he's in a mech suit, and then he becomes the mech suit. Like, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that whatsoever. And then, of course, possibly one of the bigger things is that the entire DLC is almost entirely superfluous. There's, like, no bearing on Spider-Man 2 or Miles Morales or anything like that. The story feels completely just disconnected on its own and completely unimportant. Nothing of note happens here. I feel like even if, like, Hammerhead had, I don't know, somehow broken, like, Scorpion or Vulture or someone out of prison, and you had to fight a member of the Sinister Six again or something, it would have been at least a little bit more, it would have felt like it had a little more gravitas overall. But just having this whole DLC essentially feel like wasting time, where, this is, again, while I don't dislike Miles as a character and his arc as Spider-Man, I think that there wasn't enough time in this universe dedicated to Peter just being Spider-Man on his own and dealing with those troubles. Obviously it's fine to introduce Miles as a character, and I understand this is an older Peter who's gone through a lot of stuff already, but, they really did jump the gun into Miles super quickly with Miles Morales and then Spider-Man 2, and I know that's because the Spider-Verse movies did really well, but I think they did that at the cost of kind of devaluing Peter's own storyline. And I know people like to say, oh, you really gotta respect Miles and stuff, but honestly, especially in the comics, Peter has been disrespected forever, and depending on who you talk to, he's been disrespected in the movies as well forever, like since Tobey Maguire, basically. But, I just think overall, this DLC, they probably had, like, a concept for it when they were developing the main game, and when they got to actually making the DLC, they realized they couldn't actually develop it the way they wanted to, and so it came out like this. And frankly, with how this came out, I'm kind of glad that Spider-Man 2 didn't get DLC, because I don't have confidence that it would have been any better, especially because I don't think Spider-Man 2's story was nearly as good as the first game's main campaign. But, those are just my thoughts. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.